Hey everyone, welcome back to Make the Music, and today we're sticking with our Mixing 101 series. Today we're going to how to use reverb in your mixes. And in my opinion, this is the number one way to either quickly take your mix from a decent amateur level to that pro level, or completely destroy your mix to a point where it's unsalvageable. You really need to be careful when using this. So I want to break down reverb and how to use it in your mixes. I also have a free guide, the Home Studio Toolbox. You can find that in the description down below. It shows you all the free resources you can use to start making music in your home studio with just a laptop. You can find that in the description box, as well as that'll also give you access to a bunch of samples and multi-tracks that I've done. Anyways, let's get into the video here. I'm going to play the chorus. You can hear the reverb and ambience on these different tracks. I just want you to hear it real quick, and then I'll go into what I'm doing and how to apply these principles appropriately. So let's play the track. Okay, so then you can hear the tails of the reverb there after I stop pressing play. So let's break it down. What kind of plugins are good? How should you apply reverb? I always love to go to the vocal first because it's always very clear. Obviously, the styles of using reverb and how much reverb would you changes over time, and it changes by genre. For some genres, you can barely hear any reverb. It's completely dry. It's in your face. I'm thinking more styles of punk and things like that. But then for ambient pop music or other genres, yeah, there's going to be a ton of reverb, right? So it's also very genre specific. But for something like a lead vocal here, let's talk about how we can apply ambience appropriately. So I'm going to turn off the bus ambience there and go into this lead vocal. Let's turn off the delay as well. So this is going to be 100% dry, so to speak. So dry means no ambient plugins, no reverb, no delay. This is just the sound you are getting without any of those applied. Somewhere in between the sends and the load. Okay, so that's completely dry. No ambient effects yet. So let's figure out what kind of reverb would work with this vocal. Like I said, this is genre specific. But a reverb plugin I really like to use is called Valhalla Supermassive. And this is actually a free plugin, by the way, by Valhalla DSP. So you can pick this up right now and start using it. The key with reverb is a couple different things. One, you want to keep it subtle, almost to a point where the listener actually can't hear it. And Chris Lord Algae actually talks about this. He says, add as much reverb and delay as you want, but once the listener can hear it, it's too much. And I definitely agree with that. Obviously, there's different effects you can do in the situations where you want people to hear it, but most of the time I agree. Keep it subtle, keep it as an effect, and don't let it drown out the lead vocal. And the way you do that is a couple different ways. One, by EQing the reverb. We talked about EQ in a separate video, and you can actually EQ your reverbs, keeping the pre-delay up and the tails not too intrusive with your vocal, and also using the mix knob I think is really important. So on this Valhalla preset, I really like what is called forward reverb. This is a good starting point that I like to use in my mixes here. So if I play the vocal now, here's what it sounds like. Somewhere in between the sends and... Okay, that's obviously way too much reverb, right? That sounds insane. So how can we get this to a place where we like it? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is EQ it. I'm going to EQ a lot of the low end out of the reverb. If you leave too much low end in your reverb, your mix is going to start to sound super muddy, and things are going to start to get crowded, especially if you start to stack too many reverbs on things. It's like all the clarity in your mix is going to be gone. Feels like it's covered with just a sheet of dirt or something. So I'm going to aggressively EQ out some of the low end. Same thing with the highs. You don't want ultra highs in the reverbs, but it just depends on your mix, right? So I might put it somewhere there. So let's play it again. Somewhere in between the sends and... Okay, I like how that's EQ'd better, but it's still too much reverb, right? So what I commonly do is I get the reverb to a place that sounds cool, then I dial it back with the mix knob, and there's a mix knob here and here. What I want to do is, this tail is way too long on this reverb. I'm going to bring the tail down, set the delay to about 94 milliseconds, bring the density down a bit and the feedback down a bit, just to bring the effects kind of to a lower point. Somewhere in between the sends and the low. So you can tell that reverb's shorter. Maybe you want a longer reverb, but that's fine. But I feel like I've gotten it to a place I really like it. So now I'm going to dial it back. And so you can tell in Reaper, there's a mix knob on every plugin. It's at 100%, meaning 100% of the signal going through the plugin is going to your output. But if I dial it back to 50, now it's mixing in 50% of that quote unquote dry signal, so to speak. So now let's play the vocal.
Somewhere in between the sends and the low.
That's a lot better. Let's play it in context of the mix.
Somewhere in between the sends and the load.
For me, that's still a little too audible, so I'm going to dial it back to about 32%.
Somewhere in between the sends and the load.
For me, that's actually perfect. And so the point is listening in the mix, listening to the context of the rest of the tracks and going, that's too much, that stands out, or, oh, that actually works, or maybe that sounds too dry, I need to add it back in. So getting the reverb to a great place in your plugin, then dialing in the mix knob, that's my approach with reverb. So that's that plugin there. There's also plenty of other free reverb plugins or reverbs that come stock with your DAWs. Another reverb plugin that I absolutely love to use is called the CLA Epic. And so on this clap sample here, you can hear I have some subtle reverb going on. Let me open this track up real quick with that CLA Epic plugin. So this is provided by Waves, and it actually has a delay module as well, which we'll go over delay in a separate video, but I have all the delay modules muted. In the CLA Epic, it has 4 different reverbs that you can mix in to get a sound. So here's the sound of the clap. Here's with it turned off. So you can see it sounds really dry without it. Notice I'm being really, really subtle with this reverb. It can be maybe even hard to tell at times, but what I like about this plugin is it mixes 4 different kinds of reverbs in. It has a space, it has a couple of different rooms and chambers and things. So it's got a space there, a hall, a room, and then a plate. And there are many different kinds of reverbs, but a plate tends to be a more of a roomier sounding reverb. A hall is going to be, as it implies, a long reverb, like you're in a big space. A room is going to be much tighter. It's going to have more reflections. And then this space is just sort of a custom one that goes on for a long time. So I'm going to break down what each of these are sounding like. So if I turn up the volume of the plate, for example, and just like with the other reverb, I can modify how much low end and how much top end is in the reverb. Now here's another facet of reverb as well. This is called pre-delay. And what pre-delay does, it actually delays when the reverb starts on the track. So pre-delay of 1 millisecond means the reverb is going to wait 1 millisecond till it starts sounding, or the sound goes into the track. This can help keep the signal sound dry and upfront, but then add the ambience in the background so it doesn't feel too present with the vocal. This is commonly done with like pop vocals where you feel like, wow, it's really dry and present, but I also hear like a tail or some reverb in the background. They're using pre-delay to keep the initial signal dry, but then add reverb on the back end. So you hear that reverb delay? That's exactly what the pre-delay is doing. You could hear me mess with that. Let me break down what these others do. So that's the plate kind of reverb. That's like a shorter room sound. That's more of a hall sound. And then this is the space. You can see me mess with the mix knob there. As a mix knob here, and in Reaper, every plugin has a mix knob up here. So here's the key, right? Going through your track, finding where, okay, reverb would work here. I'd like some ambience, dialing in the reverb, making sure it's not too obtrusive in the mix with the track, dialing in the EQ of the reverb, not to muddy things up, and then trying to find the sweet spot in the context of the mix. That's going to be key when using reverb plugins. In a separate video, I'm going to go over delays, which function a little bit differently, but are also another kind of ambience plugins. So please like and subscribe to the channel. I got more of these kinds of tutorials coming, and I will see you guys next time.